Y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires. Which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Happy birthday to you.
My son Levi was so proud to turn 3, but he will never get the chance to turn 4. I'm Nicole Hughes, Levi's mom. And while on a family vacation, his childhood was snatched away when I turned to close a bag of chips. He was sitting on the couch surrounded by friends, and I split a brownie with him. And then somehow he slipped out the back door unnoticed, down a flight of stairs, and fell into the pool. When I jumped in to grab my son, the other half of the brownie was still in my mouth. I never thought my child would drown, but I was wrong. Drowning is the single leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4. It is silent and fast, and it can happen even when you aren't swimming. Drowning is preventable. Please talk with your pediatrician about how you can keep your child safe.
We share the same hometown. We cover the stories that matter the most to you. We warn and protect you in times of trouble. We are your local broadcasters, reaching more people, touching more lives.
Arnie Sherman, good morning to you. How are you?
You know, suffering through like everyone else, but that's not much of a inconvenience in order to be safe and keep everybody else safe. So, we're still in the midst of the COVID pandemic, and Montana's trying to do the right thing. And, I think we're doing better than average. And on today's show, we have Leslie and Ed Wetherbee from the Old Sawmill District talking about how the real estate market, how real estate in Missoula is being affected, impacted, the trends, as we are in the midst of, COVID-19. I think it's an interesting topic to discuss in terms of, are we getting out of state people wanting to move here? What's the housing market look like? What's happening in commercial real estate? The many big projects being contemplated, and some of them, as we know, are now, back on the shelf and are not being built. So I'd like to see, in that particular area, how things are progressing and where we stand here in Missoula.
Absolutely. And as we know, they're great guests, Ed and Leslie. They have a lot going on. And they'll not only talk about Old Sawmill, but also just what else is going on in Missoula and Western Montana. We can always count on them for that type of insight. Yeah.
We want the big picture. We want to know what they're contemplating themselves, but how they fit into the bigger picture of what's going on in our community.
Absolutely. So when we come back, our guests will be Leslie and Ed Wetherbee from the Old Sawmill District. Back after this. We are back. Our guests are Ed and Leslie Wetherbee from the Old Sawmill District.
Leslie, Ed, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Thanks.
Doing great. Thank you. Nice day today in Missoula.
Happy to be here.
Summer in Missoula is a nice day every day pretty much. So, we're looking forward to continuing this as long as we can. One of the things I think that Scott and I are interested in is sort of what's happening in general in terms of real estate trends in Missoula. We know there have been articles, lately about how out-of-staters are rushing real estate offices and looking to buy property here, and property value median home prices have gone way up from they were a couple of years ago. What's your take on, if you put your hand on the pulse right now, of Missoula, how things are going here?
I would say we have a very active real estate market. Our inventory is still fairly low, and so we're seeing properties go really quickly when they're on the market. And we have the median home price continues to rise, but I wouldn't say it's just people from out of state that are rushing here. There may be some of that, but I still think that just the people that live here are we're seeing a lot of first-time home buyers, and we're seeing people who are moving up and some who are downsizing. So it's really interesting when houses do come on the market, they go fairly quickly.
I think there's another element, too, on the supply side that starting back even 12 years ago or so when we went through our last recession, that there has been a general lack of not lack, but a slowdown, I guess, in terms of the number of units that had typically come on the market every year. So there's a little bit of catch up going on here and almost everywhere. And as you read about some of the larger home builders, they'll all tell you that they have basically been out of the market for a year or two at a time, and I think that has a significant impact on some of what's going on here.
Would you also say that it's a fair, I guess, assessment that the COVID pandemic has led to less people interested in moving? They're sort of hunkering down into their homes and where they're living now and are less likely to move?
That's a really good observation. It's really hard to measure that sort of thing, but it sure feels socially, culturally, like there's a lot of that people are settling in. They just don't want to disrupt what's already a very disruptive world, and they're hunkering down. So that may be keeping some of the product off the market.
And which would make sense in terms of the impact, which is driving up median home prices. I think 2019 over 2018 in Missoula, we had almost a 9% median home price increase. I think that's the largest 1 year increase in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. Part of that is demand driven. Part of that is, and the demand, I think, is influenced by low interest rates. We're also seeing that appraisals are going up because the construction costs are going up. But I would also just remind people that Missoula is still a very affordable place to live if you compare it to other similar places in the Rocky Mountain region, for sure. I just came back from a long weekend in Colorado, and it feels like prices here are half of what they are there. And that's not to say that it makes it good. It's just to say that we need to make sure we keep everything in perspective.
Well, even in Bozeman, the median home price now is $477, which is a lot more than Missoula. So even within Montana, you see those wide differences.
It is. I hear from clients quite frequently that the prices in Bozeman are much higher than what is in Missoula, and a lot of what drove those prices up are a lot of the second home buyers.
Sure. And are we seeing a number of those here? What's your take on second home buyers in Missoula?
I think we have some. I don't think we have it like what Bozeman has. There's not quite as many. But Montana's a beautiful place to be, and a lot of times people want to spend their other time here. One of the interesting things that we found, though, when we were building the Polysquare condos, we had probably about 30% of our buyers were second home buyers. But after living here, a lot of those people decided to move here full time. So that dropped to about 18%.
We also have a number of people who have decided to make Missoula home and their home base, but they spend maybe the winter season somewhere else.
Is that right? Are you seeing downsizing happening in Missoula with respect to getting out of a bi-level ranch in town and kind of moving over to your area because it's more convenient, no common groundskeeping and things of that nature?
Yes, definitely. A lot of our buyers, that's exactly what they did. They want to be traveling more. They're retired now. They want to be traveling more, or they're just, they're still working, but they just don't want to have the hassle of having to take care of a yard, and they want to have a smaller place, and they want the community. I think we're really seeing that. So people, they were noticing that, gosh, they just really didn't ever see their neighbors. And we've really built a wonderful community here. And we kind of helped try to really start that with the condos and with the apartments that can be in place. But the residents there really embraced it and took off with it. So we're seeing just, it's wonderful how people are really enjoying spending their time with neighbors.
So for our listeners who are not familiar with Old Sawmill District, or new listeners who haven't or are new to town, why don't you give us the overview of what's happened there?
Sure. It's quite a story, actually, that began, let's say 100 years ago or longer, with the northwest part of the United States being industrialized, so to speak, with the timber industry and logging, and the rivers were a very important part of the commercial system network in this part of the country. So whether it's creating electricity or floating logs down to sawmills, which was the case here, rivers were very important. And of course, Missoula is in a valley with a number of large rivers feeding into it, and the Clark Fork River running right through city. And so this was the home of a sawmill for many generations. And in fact, the Poly Square condominiums are named after Edgar Polly's, whose family operated the initial mill here. But as time changed, the economics changed, and in the early 90s, this facility was abandoned. It was most recently operated by International Paper at that point, who actually had then been working with Idaho Timber. But nonetheless, it had been shut down, and it became a large eyesore and blighted area here right in the middle of Missoula, on the river, right in the middle of town. We call it the core of Missoula, the heart of Missoula. And so we were invited by the mayor to see what we could do. And after several false starts with other developers, he came to us and asked if we could find a way to redevelop this area. So we formed an entity called Mill Site Revitalization Project. We had some nice help, and which was committed and required at that time, dealing with the Superfund nature of the site, the floodplain, and all of the old infrastructure here, that all of which had to be deconstructed, and basically we had to start over. So starting about 18 years ago or so, we undertook this as an effort to get control of the land, do all the cleanup, and create what we think is, and always has had the opportunity to be, this really cool new mixed-use new community, a riverfront urban community right in the heart of Missoula. And so we're about a third of the way down that road now, and we've got some new stuff on the horizon. It's pretty exciting, and just seems to fit really well with what's going on in Missoula.
So what do we have now that's opened and operating, and what are the things that you can reveal that are on the horizon that are going to add to the community?
So the buildings that are completed, we have the Sawyer, which is a student living, it's student residences. That one opened about a year ago. And then we have Poly Square condos, which consists of 4 different buildings. Cambium Place, which is high-end apartments for rent, and a commercial space as well. So it's a mixed-use building. And we are about to start construction in a few weeks on our OSD Tech Campus.
What's that going to look like, Leslie?
So we're starting with 2 buildings that are both 3 stories. It's going to be just beautiful. There's a sky bridge that connects them. and it'll be about 45,000 square feet. That will be on the north side of Wyoming. So this will be the first time that we've crossed Wyoming Street and are starting construction on the north side of Wyoming now.
That is the start of what we've designated as the OSD Tech Campus. And the idea there is to encourage and recruit companies that have innovative technology, can bring great jobs to Missoula, and are very focused on kind of creating the next generation of tech companies and culture here in Missoula.
And is there an anchor tenant already selected, already committed to that project?
There is. We have a company that actually has some early roots here in Missoula called Advanced Technology Group. They expanded dramatically, and they've done a great job hiring local people, training local people. And they, in fact, are a tenant here in Cambium Place, been a great partner. And they were recently acquired by a Fortune 500 company called Cognizant. And Cognizant and ATG together have committed as the anchor tenant in this new project, and will be here for a long time. So that's really been the catalyst to help make all of this happen. And just to put it in perspective, we have about 350,000 square feet of these various projects already constructed here. And the new project, as Leslie said, is roughly 45,000 square feet. But that's maybe 1/5 of what we expect the tech campus to be when it's built out. So that's the start of what will be a significant new addition to Old Sawmill District and to Missoula.
And in 40, just so we can put it in perspective, in two buildings with 45,000 square feet, how many people will be working in a complex that size?
You know, it's a good question that I think deserves a little bit of explanation. And, you know, it comes back a little bit to the discussion about COVID, but we think there's something on the order of 300 to 400 employees in these first two buildings. But part of that needs more explanation in the sense that the workplace is changing and more people are working from home, and they've created a really interesting dynamic that will probably support more than just the people and more than just the number of desks in this building. And they have, or buildings, and they intend to bring customers and clients and other employees from other parts of the world here for training purposes, and to experience Missoula and to build on what they have now. So it's a very interesting expansion for Cognizant, and we're really pleased and proud to say that they've chosen Old Sawmill District and Missoula as a place to be.
You know, you mentioned obviously an interesting consequence of the COVID pandemic, which is people working at home before they ever anticipated they were going to be working at home, or maybe even ever thought about working at home. I have, as you do, a number of friends and colleagues whose companies have told them not to come back to the office until the end of the year. And they're working, from makeshift offices, or maybe they had a home office, but they're learning how to do their job, and companies are learning how to run their business with a very, geographically dispersed workforce now.
I think that's true, but I'll also add that there are companies that have had remote workers for many years have also said that there is value, and a lot of value, in workers, employees being able to gather on a face-to-face basis for various projects. And that doesn't mean all the time, but some of the time. And there are certain projects and certain people that need to be able to do that to effectively complete their work.
Right.
So
it's just like, the discussion or debate about coming back to school and whether you can do it all remotely. And, the answer is in many, many disciplines, in many, many areas, you cannot just do it via the internet. There has to be lab experiences. There has to be interaction in groups. There has to be the ability to, to be in a facility at some point in time for many different career focuses.
I do believe that to be true. I also believe that there is a bit of a subculture here in Missoula where we have a lot of people working here and making great livings by working remotely for companies that are not in Missoula. So I think it works both ways, and I think it's a significant part of our next generation of work.
Right. The whole area of telecommuting is just in its infancy. Hey, Scott, what about your three college age kids? What's the fall look like for them?
Well, it's a good question. I think two of my sons who are in school will be back on campus, whether they're going to be physical classes or just, virtual, and then labs that are physical. One in Colorado, one in California. And then the other's in Seattle, but he's been working out of Missoula. To your point, been telecommuting, working remotely, as is his girlfriend. So I think people are comfortable working in that scenario. And to your point, Arnie, companies are saying don't come back until the end of the year. So why leave Missoula when you can be, versus being in a big city? I think I'd rather be in Missoula.
I want to just add on this discussion about, COVID and campus and whether people are coming back. I mean, the old sawmill has a stake in how that all gets resolved because of the Sawyer student housing project. So how is that, adapting to or resonating with, the debate about what's happening in the fall at the University of Montana?
Good question, Arnie, and I'm not sure we know the answer completely. But we've seen a dramatic increase in lease-up activity in the last several months after the university gave notice that it was intending to open up for this fall. Having said that, though, we took great measures early on in the development to have a very strong 1 gig network built for this site. And that is turning out to be a tremendous benefit to the people who, even though they may be here to be on campus, there's still a lot of work they do online. I think that we're going to see a mix. We're going to see people who are going to be here but still do a lot of their work online. We're going to see a mix, I believe, of in-person and online classes. And ultimately, we have to create, and I think we have, a great place to live, whether or not they're going to their class in person every day. So we've got residents at the Sawyer who are students. We have grad students. We have what I'll call alternative students of all ages. And in fact, we have non-students that live there as well. So it's a great mix and a great community of people, and time will tell how that all unfolds.
I think we should let's do a quick ID. Our guests are Ed and Leslie Wetherbee from the old sawmill. And question for you both. You're talking about people that are actually coming to the market and maybe going to school, not going to school, et cetera, so forth. I think when faced with the choice of whether to be in Missoula or to be in some larger place where they are coming from, part of college or part of university is the socialization aspect, albeit altered a bit with COVID. But perhaps that's why you're seeing, steady rise in leases, is people still want to be in the university town, even if they can't go to class live every. Have you spoken to students and have they shared that with you?
I agree, Scott. There's a lot of what I'll call the culture of being in college that you just can't get by doing it online from home. And if we can create this environment, I will add too that our units are designed so everybody has their own private bedroom and bathroom. there's a shared living room and kitchen space, and a large common area, great room, fireplace, and study areas. But I think there's some comfort in having some private space that helps people make that decision. A traditional shared apartment or shared house may not provide that same level of kind of COVID sensitivity. But certainly we didn't go into this design thinking this way, but we always did appreciate that people would like some privacy in a bedroom and bathroom environment. And it's turning out, I think, to be very positive at this particular time.
Yeah, without that, you might as well be in the Army. I want to also ask you about C3 Work Lounge, the co-working space that you have at the Old Sawmill District. You know, how has that been affected by this change? I mean, on one hand, I could see, more people who need to work from home maybe don't want to sit at home with their family and pets and children, and they need a place to go to. On the other hand, when you go to a shared workspace, you are around other people, and there might be some sensitivity to that. So how has this played out for the shared work lounge?
We did see quite a drop in people during the beginning of the whole COVID thing, and there were a few that still they were necessary workforce, essential workers, and so they would still come and use their space, but there were very few. We have seen a lot of people come back, but I think they're doing a good job of social distancing, and they can still have their space, but we've been able to spread them out so that they're not on top of each other and not being too close. But I think they really missed that social interaction of having coworkers around that they could throw ideas off of and just being able to be around other people.
Remember, the C3 Work Lounge comes from a context of entrepreneurship and small business and people who might otherwise be working from home. And many of them, if you were to go in today, I'd say all are wearing masks. And we have done, I think, is a good job of spacing tables, spacing the workspaces, and trying to create an environment that people are comfortable with. And of course, we have people that are around cleaning, sanitizing all the time. Mm-hmm. So we're doing everything we can to support them. Everybody has their own level of sensitivity about being there. But as Leslie said, we experienced a significant concern and people wanting maybe to stay away from any kind of a space like that. But as time has gone on and measures have been taken to help make it safer and protect people, we're seeing a level of comfort, not by everybody, but by a lot of people who are saying, look, we just need to get back to work. And if it's a safe environment, then they're comfortable with it. And we hope to be able to provide that.
Well, while the debate continues to rage about, individual freedoms and the ability, the right to wear a mask or not wear a mask, the fact that Missoula, instituted a mask ordinance, in all public indoor places, has had, the effect of keeping our number of cases way down compared to Bozeman and other places around the state that haven't done it. And I think that's a credit to the community, and also it's a credit to, the businesses that have complied with all of that, that we're, Montana in general is lower than everywhere else, but Missoula, for its size, has a much lower, COVID caseload than comparable cities in this state and in region that haven't invoked a mask regulation.
I agree, Arnie, and I want to give a real shout out to our team. And in particular, when I think of the Dog and Bicycle Cafe, the ladies primarily that are working there have really embraced this idea of masks and distancing and controlling how many people are in any one place. Partly for their own safety, but primarily because we have a family of repeat customers, and they know each other by first name, and it's a community that wants to protect each other. And it's really great to see the level of effort that our staff and I know our customers are making to protect each other. It's really cool to see.
Well, particularly in a retail environment, the last thing you want is people to come down with cases associated with, being at the Dog and Bicycle Cafe. I mean, that can be devastating in the short to medium term in terms of business viability.
How about I know that you guys have Brio that's open, and I imagine you've had to take precautions there, given it's a fitness facility. Tell us about that.
So one of the things that we're really proud of is we constantly get comments on how clean Brio is. And someone made a comment the other day. They said, you expect that when a business first opens or a gym first opens, but they said, you guys have never let that level go down. We have sanitizers that we ask everyone to sanitize the equipment after they use it. And we have staff that comes through every so often and sanitizes absolutely everything so that if someone happened to forget to do it, but we're just constantly cleaning up there. We have it set up so there's not a lot of people at one time or limited to how many people can be in there. And it's been a really nice environment, and people are wearing masks while they're working out, and of course, unless they're doing something strenuous, but we have those machines spaced apart so that people are not too close to each other. So that's gone really well.
Scott, the Brio Fitness Center is a key amenity for the entire Old Sawmill District development. We have our own in-house property management group. I call it a resort management group, just to frame up the expectations. And with a staff that we have, we can do the right thing at Brio and Dog and Bike and C3 Workspace, Work Lounge, and we have our own staff that is very careful, very dedicated to making it a great place to live and work. And so when we talk about the Brio Fitness Center, we almost need to think of it in the context of a much larger organization and community and development, and it's being taken care of as an important part of the whole complex. So we have that's something that maybe we can do that others can't do quite as well. But I know that in this world, everybody's trying and wants to try to do the right thing, and so we like to think that we're near the top of that list in terms of keeping it clean and sanitized and a great place to be.
And talk about some of the other amenities that are available to folks that are either living or working in the complex.
Well, we've hit on a lot of it. That so far we have food and beverage, we have the fitness center, we have a co-working lounge. And we have a permit now to construct what we've been calling the Sawmill Grill restaurant. And in these times, we're having to be a little cautious about actually starting that, and of course, financing is an issue for restaurants in this particular world. But we will be expanding our food and beverage options. We want to create a childcare program as part of our next phase. So that's on the drawing boards. We have we'll call it a boutique hotel that's very much on our minds, and we have the location designated for that. So I think that rounds it out pretty well.
Food truck.
We're looking at another phase of what will probably be something on the order of about 75 townhomes. And then we're looking at another area that will be cottages and townhomes. So there's a lot to happen here over the next couple of years.
Right.
And infrastructure-wise, is the town is also starting to create greater extensions across the bridge to you guys, right? That's also a focus.
Yeah, one of the constraints we have, frankly, that we're not quite sure how to overcome yet, is that there's a lot of public infrastructure that's not here. And that's a big challenge and a big cost that we're just not sure the real estate market here can absorb. So when we talk about the cost of homes and the cost of everything being what it is, it's really hard for a developer to, on the one hand, pay what seems like a constantly increasing property tax obligation, and then also pay for the public infrastructure. So that's a burden that you're going to hear a lot about. And Arnie, when Arnie was asking about what seems like a hot market and a low supply of new units, I think there's something to be said for the challenges of developing and creating more residential units. So it's a big, complicated picture that we all need to sit down and resolve somehow. But things don't happen without somebody having the wherewithal and getting a profit on making an investment.
And what are some of those public infrastructure needs that are missing?
Well, we have several roads that need to be constructed, and there's one significant connector that's called Silver Parkway, which would be a significant connection, a secondary connection here in the neighborhood. And then water and sewer and electricity are the key components. We have a trunk line, a major supply line that comes right down through the middle, but it's the branching out into the next phases that we all need to focus on.
Back after this.
Struggling with CPAP?
G. Komen, we're committed to reducing U.S. breast cancer deaths by half.
We're going to do it by 2026.
Visit Komen.org/unacceptable.
Okay, Arnie, we are back. Our guests are Ed and Leslie Wetherbee from the Old Sawmill District.
We touched earlier on, the housing stock and the costs going up, and that always leads to a conversation about affordable housing. The median two-person household income in Missoula is about $56,000 a year, and that, if you follow standard formulas, would support maybe a $200,000 home mortgage, or an apartment that would be equivalent to that. And of course, our housing median costs are much higher than that. And there's constant discussion about how do you provide workforce housing and housing for median income people in Missoula. So what's your take on what we're doing and maybe what we need to do?
Good question, and a tough question, and there's a lot people wrestling with that right now. But it's not unique to Missoula.
No.
It's a conversation that's happening everywhere, and it always has been happening. I think that's something that we all need to remember, is that there's not anything really unique about this particular time or this particular discussion in Missoula. This is happening and has been happening everywhere since anywhere I've ever lived. And there is a need for sure. And the question is, who's providing the subsidy and where should that be done? And what's the best planning for the overall housing or development prospects in Missoula? When we started Old Sawmill District, we worked closely with Homeward and created a subsidized workforce low-income housing project, and they did a great job with that right here at the Old Sawmill District. So we're proud to say that we were a catalyst in helping making that happen. But there will always be a need for more workforce housing, and typically that's easier to do in a suburban or an area that's not quite in the high value core part of a city. But there's lots of different ways that people are looking at trying to help with that.
And as you know, there's the other side of the equation. There's two sides to that. Is the household income, and a lot of what is going on at the old sawmill district is helps to increase that side of the equation. The 200-300 jobs in the new tech campus are not going to be just minimum wage jobs or average wage jobs. They're going to be much higher wage jobs, and the workforce in Missoula is changing definitely from the time, for example, Leslie, when you were growing up here. This is not the same kind of workforce that was here, 20, 30 years ago.
That's right. When I was growing up here, there were quite a few different mills here, and a lot of people worked in the mills. They worked on the railroad, and it was much more blue-collar workers here.
A lot of skilled labor, but in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And, that was, in a lot of ways, this transition is following the technology curve as well. And that when Cognizant and many of the other tech workers in town, they're making very good incomes, and they have prospects for careers that will make them, take them to executive level type compensation over time. And that's been, you can't look around right now and see where there have been too many of those pathways in Missoula in the past. So
yeah, I think the average tech job in Missoula now is over $80,000 a year.
That doesn't surprise me.
And if you have two people working in a family, a young family in particular, then then you have a dynamic which offsets, the cost of building new homes and how real estate keeps, moving up and increasing in value here.
If you look at other university towns, they are often burdened, if you will, with more people who want to live there than jobs are available. And that you often have very highly educated people with great experience who are willing to take less money to work in where they consider a great place to live or to raise their kids. And so that often has a result of depressing compensation because it's a more competitive marketplace. But, having said that, we all need to understand that costs continue to rise, and that incomes hopefully will continue to rise. And the question really is, what does the workforce need to look like in order to capitalize on the opportunities that are coming down the road? And at the same time, we need to respect the fact that there have been a lot of people here who have different level of skills, and they have incomes that may be limited in some ways. And I think we all look to try to create housing and opportunities for those people as well. So I'm a big believer in having a varied and diverse demographic, in that provides the real texture and makes places a great place to live. So I think we need to support all of that. It's a lot of it just comes down to money and who's going to pay for it. And then sometimes that comes back to the public financing for paying for infrastructure and things like that help keep the cost of real estate down.
Speaking of that, you talked about diversity in workforce, and that leads to looking at, construction workforce. You're going to build 2 new buildings with 45,000 square feet. There's a lot of other projects going on around town. What is the sort of the profile of or the overview of the construction industry in Missoula?
It's a really good question, and I would like to answer that tomorrow if we were to do this again, because this afternoon we are opening bids for the construction of the new buildings we were just talking about. So that's going to be a real interesting benchmark into just what is happening out there. My intuition is that some of the large projects that have been on the drawing boards are not on the drawing boards right now. And so the level of construction activity has decreased fairly significantly in terms of big commercial projects. And how that impacts cost will be interesting too.
Right. Well, the whole sort of Golden Triangle, new hotel development, the stuff that was being contemplated to have broken ground this summer, obviously, is not happening.
Arnie, I think it's a time to make the point that because of everything that's going on in the economy and the COVID situation, the access to capital is even more difficult than it had been already. So that is holding a lot of things back. At the same time, it seems like there's a lot of home building construction that is going on. So it may be that there's a difference in terms of just parts of the industry that the contractors and subcontractors that focus on home building might be very busy, but the larger contractors doing big projects might not be.
Right. Well, the Wave Hotel, Nick Chakota's projects look like they're on hold. But if you go around and take a look at Ranch Club, there's houses being built all over that property at this point in time. And out where Scott and I live at Circle H Ranch, we have the first 2 new houses being built in 10 years. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of home, from what I can see, a lot of home construction going on. But the big commercial kinds of projects seem to, except for your groundbreaking, seem to be a bit on hold at the moment.
I agree. We lived through a period over the last several years where we felt somewhat at the mercy of these contractors who had much more work available than capacity to fill. And we know that costs were higher than maybe they should have been. But we're hoping now that maybe we're seeing a bit more of an equilibrium and maybe prices should be where we would expect them to be normally.
Well, hopefully those bids will reflect that. Let me ask you about Wetherbee Group Real Estate. That's a new entity that has emerged, not too distant past. What was your and Leslie's thinking on creating your own real estate group?
Well, so I've been in real estate for several years now. We've been working on this on many years and doing this a lot of the real estate down at Old Sawmill District. And we just decided it was time to start our own brokerage firm. And we're really excited about that. We are still doing stuff here at Old Sawmill District, but we're also branching out and we're working with other buyers and sellers as well throughout the Missoula area. And it's exciting. It's that we've got 3 licensed agents that are working primarily helping people, and we're excited to offer that.
We have a neighborhood now here where there's when everything is full and it's getting closer to being full, that we may have 500 or so people living here already. And when you think about life in general, there's always somebody who's they're in transition. They're looking to build a house or buy a house, or they're selling a house in order to come here. And so there's a lot of activity in just based on normal life transitions. And after we develop relationships with the people here, we like to think that we can help them move on or facilitate them coming here. But there's also just a lot of activity in general. And given the staff that we've developed and the great team of people here, we feel like we've got a lot of Missoula history and a lot of experience that we can use to help people.
That's fantastic. Hey, we have to wrap it up. How can people find out more information about both the old sawmill and the new entity?
So they can reach us at our office, 406-203-3015, or feel free to email me at leslie@oldsawmilldistrict.com.
Fantastic. And, we appreciate you guys coming on. You're always delightful guests and always, forthright and transparent, and I feel great optimism for Missoula after speaking to you, and just the trends that are going forward. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having us, and I like to say thank you guys for not only this segment but the other work that you do, because there is a lot going on in Missoula, and it's great for a broader audience to be able to hear what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. We're proud of where we live, and we like to share the stories of what's going on in our community, and we have a great community. And what you've done over there has made it a lot better, and has contributed to the contemporization and the modernization of Missoula more than any other single project in the area. So I think Scott and I thank you for that.
Well, thanks. That's nice to hear.
Absolutely. Well, we'll catch up we'll do an update, and then in 6 months from now, we'll see how things are going.
Perfect.
Sounds great.
Talk to you then.
Take care.
When it comes to tools,